Welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully, it is not as snowy and not as cold wherever you guys are. Right now, there's about probably a good foot and a half of snow out here in Indianapolis, and it's like -1 degrees. So that's pretty fantastic. Brian, I'm sure the weather up by you guys is not much better.
Dude,
Worse.
it's I don't know about worse. It's bad. It's been pouring all day. My wife has a friend over, and she came over this morning at like 9 a.m. And if you saw her car in the driveway, it looked like she's just been sitting there all week and hasn't moved her car. It's just completely covered. So yeah, it's been dumping, but it's been a soft snow. So our girls like that. Our dogs like that for sure. They like to go out and run around in it for about 2 minutes, and then it's like, okay, it's cold. Time to come inside. But yeah, a lot to discuss today. Obviously, Buy So Hold. This is kicks off our new format, not a new format because we're still doing the things we've always done, but sort of our new schedule. Buy So Hold has always been on a Wednesday, but now it is going to be on a Monday. But before we do, we obviously have some news that we're going to discuss, Trevor, and that's news that we got last night. I was sitting there working on putting some depth charts together for our show tomorrow. We're going to do our way too early top 25 for tomorrow. So I'm working on putting depth charts and stuff like that together. And Trev's text me goes, Mickens is gone. And so I thought that this might happen, but obviously was hoping that it wouldn't happen. and then got official word that it was a done deal. So yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about first, Trev. Mike Mickens is off to the NFL. He is the new he'll be the secondary coach and pass game coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens.
I mean, it's a great hire for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, starting off, he's rejoining forces with, guys like Kyle Hamilton. I know that the Ravens had a struggling defense this year. I wouldn't necessarily consider the secondary being the main problem, but that's a strong hire by Minter, and they needed to make an impact on the back end of the defense. And for all the good things that we said about Mike Mickens, that's the correct hire. They went out and got somebody that has excelled at his job. But from a Notre Dame perspective, this one stings. Like you said, it was a job where, look, when somebody does the job of Mike Mickens, you can't expect them to stay around forever, understandably so, but it doesn't make it hurt any less when they leave because you know what they've done up to this point, and we knew how big of a role he was going to play in Notre Dame's 2026 season. So definitely a blow, that's for sure.
Well, as you mentioned, Trevor, it's a huge get for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, this is, in my opinion, one of the premier teachers of secondary in the country. And when you think about where Notre Dame was for a very long time when it came to secondary development, secondary recruiting, and then you look at what he's done in recent seasons, it's like, yeah, this isn't by accident. And this started to happen before Marcus Freeman got here. He was here a year before. But Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens working together was a great tandem, as far as with recruiting and then obviously the development that Mike Mickens has done. And you're talking about a team that 3 out of the last 4 years, actually 2 of the last 4 years, you have had a freshman All-American corner. And then this year, you had a freshman All-American safety. So 3 out of 4 years, you've had a freshman All-American in the secondary. You've had young guys consistently stepping into a very complicated position and thriving, whether it's Benjamin Morrison back in 2022. Christian Gray actually did very well as a true freshman in 2023 coming off the bench. If you remember the game where Benjamin Morrison was out and Cam Hart got hurt early in the game, and Christian stepped in, played great football, and then 2024, Leonard Moore steps in, and then 2025, you got Tay Johnson. Adon Schuler started as a redshirt freshman on a team that played for a national championship. I mean, you look at and why was there not a freshman All-American cornerback this year? Because your last 2 stud freshmen were the 2 starters on the outside, and you look at just, this year, unanimous All-American. 2 of the last 3 years, Notre Dame's had a unanimous All-American in the secondary with Mike Mickens leading the charge, and should be 3 years in a row because Xavier Watts got absolutely screwed out of being a unanimous All-American last year. So he's done a tremendous job. And you look at the job of the pass defense in recent years, there's and what we're doing here is we're not saying this to panic. This is giving Mike Mickens his respect before we dive into what's next. And you're talking about a defense that this past year, which was not even a great year for the Notre Dame secondary for reasons we've discussed, this was the down year for Notre Dame secondary. And in the down year for the Notre Dame secondary, Notre Dame finished 9th in the country in passer rating allowed, Notre Dame finished the season 15th in completion percentage allowed. They finished 19th in yards per attempt allowed. They finished 20th in fewest touchdowns allowed. They finished 4th in interceptions and played less games than everybody else this season. Last year, Notre Dame led the nation in passer rating. They were tied for 6th with the national champions, Ohio State, in yards allowed per pass attempt. They allowed 14 touchdowns. They had 19 interceptions, which again tied for 5th, and also ranked 4th in fewest yards allowed. In 2023, I believe that was Mike Mickens' first year as the pass game coordinator. They finished 3rd in the country in yards allowed. They once again, for the first of 2 years, led the nation in passer rating. Their 52.4% completion rate was 2nd in the country. They improved that in 24 by being number 1 in the country. In 2023, Notre Dame also was 3rd in the country in yards allowed per pass attempt. They allowed 8 touchdowns that season, 8 touchdowns, and had 16 interceptions. In the last 3 years, Notre Dame has had 16, 19, I'm pulling up 16, 19, and 21 interceptions. That's 56 interceptions in the last 3 years for the Notre Dame defense. Twice led the nation in pass efficiency defense. Finished 2nd or 1st in lowest completion percentage allowed in the last 3 years. And you just watch them play, the technical proficiency with which they play the game. You know, the communication that you see on the back end, which is absolutely outstanding for a secondary, especially one that has as much youth as they have. Great confidence. And then, of course, tremendous recruiting. And the recruiting, Trev, is there's 2 ways to be a great recruiter. And I think 2 things you need to be a great recruiter. 1 is a great evaluator. And then 2 is, can you convince kids to come play for you? And when you look at Mike Mickens and finding Benjamin Morrison, Leonard Moore, who were not big-time recruits, not highly ranked recruits, being able to go out and recognize that a Don Schuler was an absolute stud and getting him to come to Notre Dame. You look at that, the ability to then develop those players and the success they had. It's like every year they're going to the portal for a nickel, and like every year it's a home run, every year. And then, of course, the development of those young players. And then when you start to be able to your evaluation is, we evaluate this guy's a stud too, and he happens to be a 5-star, and you're able to go out and get those guys in recent years as well. And you think of the incoming DB class. So Mike Mickens has done an absolute tremendous job. And look, I'm a believer in this, Trev. I'm a believer that there's 2 very important things that I believe in as a coach. One is, and this is not the most important, this is the one that's most obvious, but one is, did you leave a place better than you found it? And Trev, there is no doubt when you look at what Notre Dame had in the secondary in 2020, when Mike Mickens took over as the DB coach at Notre Dame, and you look at what he inherited. You obviously had Kyle Hamilton coming off a very good year, but you had Sean Crawford, who was in his 6th year, was a banged-up player, was moving positions again. You had true freshman Clarence Lewis. You had to go to the portal to get Nick McLeod. You had Tariq Bracy at nickel, Houston Griffith at safety, who hadn't really done a whole lot. DJ Brown, you went and got Isaiah Pryor to play Rover out of the portal. You had KJ Wallace. I mean, it wasn't this. These are good players. I like some of those guys, but it's like you look at that room, and Clarence Lewis steps in as a starter as a true freshman, and is part of a team that plays for a championship. And then you look at what the room became. A guy that turned 2 former wide receivers, guys that played wide receiver at Notre Dame, into NFL starters. Think about that. 2. Cam Hart and Xavier Watts. There's no question. And you look at the state of the current roster of what the next guy will be inheriting, there is 0 doubt that Mike Mickens is leaving the secondary room at Notre Dame in a much, much, much better place than they found it. Than he found it.
No question. I mean, whoever walks into this job, it's one of the reasons why I think this has to be one of the most desirable jobs left in all of college football. I mean, if I was a defensive backs coach anywhere and say, hey, okay, I get to walk into a spot and have Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, Adon Schuler, Tay Johnson, Mark Zachary, Dallas Golden, that incoming freshman class of 2026, Yeah, you can sign me up for that. DJ McKinney, Jaden Sanders. There's a lot of reason for this to be a very desirable job, but it's all a testament to what Mike Mickens did during his time at South Bend. Quite literally, the definition of what more do you want me to do? And that's how we left it. And so I understand the decision for him to go. And it's one that, as a fan, it's a tough pill to swallow. But man, you look at what he's done, and I understand it.
The second thing about it, Trev, and I'll kind of give a backstory on what happened in a second. But the second thing about it is you want someone who cares about developing young people, not just as football players. And I'll relay a story that I was told a couple years ago. This isn't from Mike Mickens or another Notre Dame coach. This is from a parent. This is of a parent whose son was buried on the depth chart at Notre Dame, had no hope for being like any kind of starter or even a two-deep guy. Buried. Was a scholarship player, though. And I remember talking to the dad, and I said, so, what are you, after the season, so what are your guys' plans? Like, have you guys had the conversation about the transfer portal and all that? And he goes, yeah, talk to my son about it, and he doesn't want to do it. So, well, why is that? He wants to get that Notre Dame degree. He goes, yeah, that's part of it. He goes, but he loves playing for Mike Mickens. And he goes, he said he told me, Daddy treats me like he does everybody else. He treats me like he treats the starters. I'm getting better every day. He coaches me up every day. And he had built this feeling of unity in that room where this kid didn't want to leave his family because he felt like he was still valuable. He had value to the program, even though he was never going to actually take a meaningful snap on Saturdays. I think that says so incredibly much about who Mike Mickens is as a coach. And the greatest stories I've ever heard about Mike Mickens are from parents. And the vast majority are from parents whose kids didn't even play that much. Like, I've talked to people of starters and they have great things to say, but the most of the parents that just sing the praises of Mike Mickens are not even starters. Parents who might have a reason to be, my kid should play. And it wasn't about how much it was about how much he took care of their kids, how much he cared about their kids, how he invested in their kids. And that's what a college football coach is supposed to be about. And that's also what Notre Dame is losing with Mike Mickens. It's not just someone who can teach the position. It's someone who made you a better man because you were a part of his room. And that, at the end of the day, should be the most important thing for a coach. And I love the fact that Mike Mickens showed that you can not only do that, but you can also coach football at an elite level and also care about what kind of young men you're producing. And I think that says so much about who he was as a coach.
Yeah, I definitely think that was something that's been lost a little bit in translation with this new day and age of college football that makes it so transactional. And Mike Mickens is one of the good ones that put the time and effort in to build those true relationships. So definitely something that's going to be missing South Bend, that's for sure.
So let's talk about kind of what went down, Trevor. I put an intel piece on the board, and there's a lot of ways we can go with this. We can talk about, obviously Mickens not getting even interviewed for the D coordinator job last year. I think played a role in this hire from the standpoint of Mike Mickens, like all coaches, has goals and aspirations as a coach. All of them do. I believe that Mike Mickens wants to be a defensive coordinator someday, and I believe that Mike Mickens wants to be a head coach someday. A lot of coaches have those goals. We've seen them in the past talk about those goals. Not him, but like other coaches. Dylan McCullough never hid the fact that he wants to be a head coach someday. He's never hidden that fact. And so I think when you've done what Mike Mickens had done through last season, and you can't even get an interview for the D coordinator job, I think what that says is, yes, I'm valued by the head football coach for the job I'm doing. And there's no question that Marcus Freeman valued Mike Mickens as the DB coach. That's why he got pay raises every offseason, even years where he didn't even have to ask for them. It's just, okay, by the way, you're getting a pay raise. But obviously Marcus Freeman, for whatever reason, didn't feel Mike Mickens was prepared to be the defensive coordinator. I'm not here to argue that. I'm not here to debate that. It doesn't matter. It happened. It is what it is. But I think what the realization was is that if Mike Mickens wants to achieve his goals, it's just not going to happen at Notre Dame. It's going to have to happen somewhere else. But even with that, Mike Mickens was not looking for another job, from what I was told. it was Jesse Minter got hired from by the Baltimore Ravens, I believe, 4 days ago? Was it like Thursday?
Yeah. Last
Trev?
week. Yep.
And there's a connection there. So Mike Mickens played at Cincinnati. If you guys remember this, Mike Mickens played DB at Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, from 05 to 08. And the Jesse Minter was a graduate assistant coach in 07 and 08. And then they worked together at Indiana State. When Mike Mickens got out of coaching, Jesse Minter was already at Indiana State, and he helped get Mike Mickens a job at Indiana State. That was Mike Mickens' first coaching job outside of a year at Cincinnati. So there's always been sort of they've known each other. There's been a relationship there, and so that was kind of something that was important to him. Rick Minter was obviously at Cincinnati before that. That's Jesse's dad. So he didn't coach Mike Mickens, but like that family had kind of been connected there. And so when he pursued Mike Mickens, it was one of those things where you're going to basically have the same role you have at Notre Dame, which is it's a promotion, because you're going from that job in college to now you've got that job in the National Football League. And it was one of those things where it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. You get to go coach Kyle Hamilton again, and you get to coach Alohi Gilman, and you get to coach the Ravens secondary. It was too good of an opportunity to pass up. And the reality is defensive back coaches are clearly valued more in the NFL than they are in college football. There just aren't a whole lot of DB coaches getting promoted to be coordinators and head coaches. There's some. Obviously, Chris Ash was a DB and a DB coach, and Mike Elko was a safeties coach. But you're not seeing a lot of guys known as corners coaches that are getting those type of opportunities. That's not the case in the National Football League, where it's very clear that secondary coaches are getting D coordinator jobs, they're getting head coaching jobs. And I think maybe that had a little bit to do with it as well. But this really came down to this was just an opportunity that was too good to pass up. And Mike Mickens has given 6 seasons to the University of Notre Dame and built this into a great situation. And that's kind of how it came to be. It's just like, look, if you want to achieve those goals, it's just not going to happen here. I'll say one other thing, and I went into more detail on the message board. I know there's a lot of people that are like, hey, I've heard this. He didn't like working with Chris Ash. They didn't get along, things along those lines. I was told, I asked about that last night, and I was told from a very, very close source of the situation that wasn't the case at all. Like, I think it took time for them to get on the same page. But I was told that had no factor. Mike Mickens has a lot of respect for Chris Ash, and I think he was able to teach Chris Ash some things, and I think Chris Ash was able to teach him some things. And so I was told that this was literally just about a career opportunity that he couldn't pass up. And so there's no drama here. There's no like, he told Marcus Freeman to go, himself, and you know what I mean, and he told he didn't like Chris Ash, and he was still pissed about getting passed over. I don't think he was pissed about getting passed over as much as he just realized, if I want to achieve the things I want to achieve in my career, it's just not going to happen here. But I will tell you that Mike Mickens turned down a lot of jobs over the last year as well, including NFL jobs. This was a unique situation that was it was too much to pass up. And so that's why Mike Mickens was on the road recruiting last week, even though he's leaving this weekend. It literally, like, when he was out on the road recruiting, this was not on the radar at all, because the head coach just got hired like Thursday or Friday. So, like, I know it sells, like having a juicy story sells, and the drama of this and the drama of that. But really, I mean, I made a lot of calls, and I asked those tough questions last night. And I'm quite confident in saying that this was about a coach who'd given everything he had to a place, getting an opportunity that he just couldn't say no to. I really think that's what it was about. Unfortunate for Notre Dame, but I do think that's what it's about. So I don't have any juicy drama of backroom fighting. I mean, I'd heard about a thing that happened between the two before game, but that stuff happens in coaches' rooms all the time. with people who are tight. I mean, I've gotten into disagreements with coaches who were my best friends on the staff. That's football. It's a passionate thing. It was made very clear that this was not about anything other than just an opportunity to pass up. Now, not getting passed up for the D coordinator job last year played a role in it, but not like in this bitter kind of FU, type of I want out, because Mike Mickens has had a lot of opportunities to leave Notre Dame for very good jobs between then and now. I really think this was just a pathway that said, hey, this is too good for me to pass up, and it's something that's going to work for my family as well, because he's a husband and a father of a young daughter, you know what I mean? So he's not going to just take any kind of job, which he would have if he was bitter about what happened last year. I think it's just you had a great job. You couldn't, you just couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, every single one of us in this chat, Brian, I'm sure you've been there. I certainly have been there, where we've worked jobs before where we just kind of look at it and evaluate. And it's like, okay, I'm capped out here. It stinks. You make relationships with people, you have friendships at whatever job, but look, that's just how it goes sometimes. It stings. It doesn't make it any worse, but I understand him taking the job. I fully support him taking the job, and I hope he has a lot of success at the next level, because for a lot of coaches, that's the goal, is to get to the National Football League. I understand it. Dylan McCullough left last year. Mike Mickens left this past year. Al Golden left last year. So there's a lot of different attrition that goes on, and all for varying reasons, and I get it. Dylan McCullough had aspirations to go back and become a head coach, and he felt the best way to do that was the NFL. Al Golden wanted to move closer to his family. Mike Mickens, is kind of following his dream to take those next steps in his career, and he gets to do it alongside somebody that arguably got him started on this path of coaching, rejoining with Jesse Minter. So I understand it. It stings as a Notre Dame fan, but Brian, that leaves us with a spot where do you go next? Mm-hmm. What does Marcus Freeman do now? Because we've talked ad nauseum about how this team has the opportunity to do something really special in 2026. Still, right now, even though it's been a couple weeks, Notre Dame is still favored on FanDuel to win the national championship in 2026. I'm losing track of my years. But we believe that Mike Mickens was going to play a big part of that. And so now it's up to Marcus Freeman to now have to replace the best defensive backs coach in the country.
That's going to be the challenge. And here's what I'm not going to do. And this isn't a shot at anybody else. I don't know if anybody else is doing this. I'm just telling you guys because I've been asked about it. I'm not going to throw out a list of candidates that I like and be like, here's guys that are on the board and here's guys consider, because I don't know who's on the board right now. I don't know who Marcus Freeman's going to consider. The reason I'm not going to give you a list is because I could tell you who I think he's going to hire, and I could pump up a couple guys. But if Marcus Freeman goes in another direction, then people are going to be like, oh, I can't believe you hired this person. I've seen this happen before in the past. So what I'll do is as I get real names, I'll talk about them, or I'll probably just wait until he makes the hire, because I don't think it's going to take a super long time to make this hire. Look, I have to think that Marcus Freeman is not an unintelligent person, and he's not an idiot, and he's not naive. If after passing over Mike Mickens a year ago, Marcus Freeman didn't have an idea that he's not going to have Mike Mickens for the next 10 years, I got to question his sanity. And since we all know that Marcus Freeman's an intelligent person, I have to think that there's a list of people he's turning to. This isn't like, well, right, got a new opening. Who should I consider? I'm taking all applications. I got to think he has an idea of the people he wants to consider. Chris Ash is going to have people that he wants to consider, and Marcus Freeman's agent will probably have some say in who he talks to as well, as we've seen with past hires. But we've also seen that Marcus Freeman relies on his coordinators a lot for hires. I know some people don't like that. I understand, especially with what we saw from Chris Ash's preferred way of playing defense last year. But at the end of the day, he's the defensive coordinator. And if you don't think your defensive coordinator is capable of making a good hire on the defensive staff, then you shouldn't have him as your defensive coordinator. You need someone that's going to work with him and can teach the things that he wants to employ. I still hope that Chris Ash learned some things last year about what can and can't work at an elite level with the talent he has. But he should have a say. Now, Marcus Freeman has to make the hire. It has to be who he wants, not who the DC wants, it can't be who his agent wants. It can't be who Brian Driscoll wants or who Trevor Trowbridge wants or anybody else. It's got to be who he thinks gives his program the best chance to go out there and win a championship in 2026. And so obviously that's very important. So I'm not going to give like a list of guys. There's a lot of good DB coaches out there. You got to hire one. It better not be. Here's all I'll say. It better not be someone who's never been like a lead dog in the room before. That's all I'll say. You don't turn this over to someone who's got potential but's never been a full-time coach. This is a Ferrari. You don't hand it over to your 16-year-old kid who's never driven a car before. You know what I mean? Or a 16-year-old kid who just got his, 15-year-old kid who just got his learner's permit. You know what I'm saying, Trev? Like, you don't do that. You go out and find the best in the business that fits what you're trying to do as a program. Someone who can coach and recruit. Coaching being the primary thing here because the recruiting has already been done. You know what I mean? Like, your job is basically don't screw this up. That's the job for Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash. Don't screw this up. And I could give you a list of 3 or 4 guys that I like. But if he doesn't hire someone from my list, that doesn't mean he didn't make a good hire. And the other thing, too, I found is if I suggest they hire this, and they go outside the box and I criticize that hire, people will take that and turn that into, oh, you're just mad he didn't go after who you want him to go after. That silliness. So I'm like, fine. I won't give you any thoughts on who they should hire. I will evaluate who they do hire. And it better be a home run. Because there's this thought that, well, they're going to be fine. Well, they could be. Mike Mickens is going to be very hard to replace. No one's irreplaceable. No one. But they've got to make a good hire. I mean, you got a new D-line coach. Chris Ash played a role in that. That was a freaking home run hire, bringing in Charlie Partridge. Like Jared Parker leaves to become head coach at Troy. You went out and got Mike Denbrock, home run hire. But there's also been some hires that have been underwhelming and some hires that have been bad. And so you've got to go out there and make that kind of right hire. Because we saw when Harry Hiestand left, the Notre Dame offensive line has still not been the same since Harry Hiestand left. They are not really O-line U anymore. They're not. I mean, Notre Dame's produced, one NFL draft pick in the first round since Harry Hiestand left? One. Right? And that was Joe Alt. We haven't seen one offensive line be a legit Joe Moore Award contender. So, yeah, just because it's loaded now doesn't mean it'll continue in the future. That's what makes this hire so important for Marcus Freeman. And I'll just sit back and see who he's going to go get, and then we'll evaluate that hire for what it is. He's made one hire this offseason. That's it. And it was a banger. I mean, he drilled it because you obviously lost Max Bulla. So they transition Al Washington to the linebackers, and they go out and hire Charlie Partridge. Home run. Home run. Hopefully Coach Freeman can make a similar hire with the secondary. But it's crazy to think about the 2024 defensive staff is completely gone. Because like even the same coach that's here is not coaching the same position he was in the 24 class. Or 24 team. It's completely different. In 2 years. That's college football now. In 2 years, it's completely changed. That's college football. That's what happens when you have success. Now it's up to Coach Freeman to say, okay, we're going to keep this thing going. I got to think there's legit DB coaches out there that would love to coach this unit and recruit to this program. I would think.
You definitely would, especially with the talent that they have coming back and the recruiting class that they have coming in 2026. I would expect that as well. But I'll even take it a step further. Yes, I absolutely hope this is a home run hire. It has to be. This is a very important season for Notre Dame, and I don't want to paint this picture if it's a bad hire that Notre Dame can't win a national championship. It's not that. But this isn't also just replacing an analyst. This is replacing the best defensive backs coach in college football. So it has to be a home run hire.
I mean, it even took Larry Coker 3 years to ruin Miami. You know what I mean? Like Larry Coker won a championship in Miami because of what he inherited. You know what I mean? So yeah, but you do need someone that can really get the most out of this group, and that's going to be a key. It's going to be a key. So like I said, I'm not going to get into the whole this is who we should look at or this is early names, but I'm going to pretend this is early names, but in reality, it's just who I like. Or I mean, I've had so many different people tell me names to consider. It's hilarious. It's like 9 names on the board already. I'm pretty sure Marcus Freeman's not looking at 9 guys the day after Mike Mickens left. I'm pretty sure that's not the case. So I just take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt, and we'll see who hires. And like I said, I imagine it'll happen relatively quickly. Like if we're a couple weeks down the road and we haven't gotten wind of who he's going to hire, I'll be a little bit like, interesting. So we'll see how it plays out.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to jump into the buy, sell, hold, new Irish breakdown format for the offseason coming up your way. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. And the best way to stay in tune with everything going on in the offseason and the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.